the 2017-18 academic year. We have a great year ahead, full of promise and full of opportunities. We welcome 156 new students to the School of Education and 425 returning students who are one step closer to graduation. Today we're here to celebrate the new year with the help of some special guests. If you're live tweeting or posting on any other social media platform, so if you're on your phones, we're assuming you're posting feverishly, please use the hashtag VCU SOE The VCU School of Education aims to be the leader in urban education through excellence, through innovation and impact, not only in our schools, but in our communities, families, and in the lives of children. VCU is a premier urban research university, and as its School of Education, we have a responsibility to address the multifaceted challenges that impact our schools and that impact our children. The important words here are our children. When we focus on the data, discussions on school improvement, district initiatives, teacher shortage, benchmarks, metrics, we sometimes lose sight that we're talking about the lives and the futures of children. Elementary school children who are 5 and 6 years old, 5 and 6 years old. Middle school children who are 12 and 13 years old. 15 and 16-year-old high school children. They may feel like they're adults, I got 2 of them, but they're children. The challenges impacting our children, families, communities, and schools are not average, and they won't be fixed with average thinking nor average efforts. We have to be boldly aspirational and extraordinary in our intentions, in our words, in our outcomes, and in our impact. We must run to the fire. And I mean this, we must run to the fire like first responders with a sense of urgency to help children, to help their families, and to help their lives. So as we begin this academic year, I want us to think deeply and internally about how we can change the trajectory for children, particularly our children of promise who are struggling in challenging environments. I would like to challenge each and every one of you, myself included, to think deeply and introspectively about how you can change the world beginning right here at VCU and in the Richmond area. I'd like to introduce someone who has thought deeply about this beginning right here in Richmond. In November 2016, Mayor LeVar Stoney was elected as the 80th and youngest mayor in Richmond's history. A proud graduate of James Madison University, he's a former executive director of the Democratic Party of Virginia, who in 2014 became the first African American to serve as Secretary of the Commonwealth of Virginia after being appointed by Governor Terry McAuliffe. In that role, he led the largest, oldest, most public-facing office of the governor's cabinet and was the driving force behind transforming the process that has restored civil rights and voting rights to more than 18,000 disenfranchised Virginians, more than the past 7 administrations combined. Since his election as mayor, he has distinguished himself as a progressive, energetic, and innovative leader who is redefining the way city government works and is promoting community engagement and regional cooperation to build what he calls One Richmond, a city that is welcoming, inclusive, and works for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Oh, come on. It's not Monday morning. This is Friday. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, it's an honor to be here and be a part of the opening convocation for this year's VCU School of Education academic year. As I said many times, VCU is a critical partner for the city of Richmond, and the School of Education is a particular crucial partner in our efforts here in Richmond to improve our public schools and the lives of our children. A thriving public education system is the key to developing the gifts of our young people, promoting upward social mobility, and providing our children the opportunity to reach their dreams. I know this because I lived it. Last year I talked a lot about how I was the first in my family to graduate from high school. My father never graduated, my mother never graduated, my grandmother didn't make it out of 8th grade. I would not be here today if it wasn't for public education, but particularly for my teachers. Many of my teachers did not look like me, but I was always grateful for what they saw. A couple of teachers come to mind. I remember being in 3rd grade and wanting to be a part of the social studies club. I was a social studies nerd. That's how I got here. There was a teacher named Mrs. Love. She had I would say, a Tidewater accent. And she didn't say social studies, it was like social studies. And she told me that I was picked to be part of the social studies club after school. And my father we didn't have transportation for after school activities. And I remember being in 3rd grade and calling the central office and asking about an activity bus. Now I could not believe what they probably thought on the other end. And a 3rd grader's calling and asking about an activity bus. But after calling around, I went to Mrs. Love and said I was unable to find transportation, I would not be able to participate. She talked to a few parents and found transportation to and from to ensure I got to be part of the social studies. Or when I was in high school, when I knew that I was not going to have Christmas one year because my father lost his job. A number of coaches, teachers, behind the scenes were able to gather money and took me down to the locker room and gave me a gift of money and other items to provide Christmas for my family. Those are teachers and coaches that I'll never forget. So when public schools work well, anything is possible for anybody. That's the promise of public education. And I've been lucky to live out that promise. But when public education is not working well, dreams get crushed and great promise turns to profound hopelessness. Just 2 short months ago, I had the opportunity to attend a numerous amount of graduations and moving on ceremonies at Richmond Public Schools. From little 5th graders to high school graduations, I got to see people walk across the stage. I got to celebrate with the hundreds of proud parents who celebrated their children overcoming tremendous adversities to earn the right to walk across that stage. But I also worry about the several hundred teenagers who didn't make it or haven't made it yet. The percentage of students not graduating in Richmond Public Schools on time is about double the state average, and has been that way for a number of years. As mayor, that is a number that I refuse to accept. You all have seen the discouraging reports on Richmond's performance on the SOLs for 2016-27 released this week. While we can reasonably debate whether testing in general or Virginia SOLs in particular are the best tool for measuring progress, the reality is that almost all the statistics in Richmond are discouraging. One national study, in fact, showed that the city of Richmond is in the bottom 2% of localities nationwide in promoting upward social mobility. Strengthening public education is the key to turning that statistic around, and the hopes and lives of thousands of our children around as well. I believe in the abilities and talents of our children and young people. Some already are excelling, becoming community leaders. Some are winning scholarships and moving upward. With strong support inside and outside the classroom, many more of our kids are capable of doing so. And I've seen it firsthand. I visited 30 schools this year, and I've seen the excitement of the teachers who have inspired a number of our students right here in Richmond. The challenge before is one that's within our grasp. We have to take an informed, thoughtful view on how to strengthen public education and expand upward mobility for our kids. Our specific situation in Richmond is shaped by our high poverty rate. As you all know, 40% of our children live under the poverty line. My strategy as mayor is to support public education through the development of a framework, what I call the RVA Education Compact. This will provide a framework for all of us to work together to raise our children up. In particular, I'm focused on the whole child, a paradigm for addressing the needs of children that offers a constructive way to make sure local and state government is doing everything that we can to make jobs for teachers and school boards easier by addressing the needs of our families outside the classroom as well. For the purpose of our conversation today on education, the whole child approach is that to support student success and to give our teachers the best possible chance of success. The entire community must come together to support the needs of children inside and outside the classroom. That work starts with the city agencies that report to me doing everything we can to work with Richmond Public Schools. We have to stop blaming teachers for the woes of schools and start making the investments that give our teachers and children the chance to be successful. This year in the budget, we added an additional $6.1 million to focus on teacher retention, to raise salaries here in Richmond, to make us competitive with our region. It's just not teachers that matter as well. Great principals and great school leaders matter too. The schools I've walked into, and when I'm greeted by the principal, are the ones I know, well, I know the ones that are under IC 7. You know it and feel it when you walk through the door of some of our schools. And you know the good principals when you see them as well. That combination of good teachers and great school leaders matter. The RVA Education Compact I've championed is intended to kickstart the progress on improving public education in Richmond. To make that progress, our kids need, we as adults must be intentional, not accidental, in how we work together. The compact is an agreement between the mayor, the city council, the school board, all working together. My commitment is this. With the compact, we will be coordinating, city council, school board, and the mayor, to focus on the success of our children. We also will create a children's cabinet to promote better communication and collaboration between city and RPS agencies. And lastly, we will form an education compact team consisting of representatives from school board, city council, RPS, and city administrators, as well as community stakeholders, teachers, parents. The aim of this group is to make non-binding policy recommendations on key issues related to funding the needs of schools and families and children. These are simple commitments to creating a better policy process. We can't solve problems or meet challenges if we don't commit to talking about them. We can't rush them into the corners any longer. We have an upcoming meeting this upcoming Monday at 5 o'clock at NLK. If you're interested, I would love to see you there and contribute to our conversation. But we also must remember that action, not talk, is our ultimate goal. We can talk all day long. We've been talking all day long. It is now time to act. In broad terms, the goals are to facilitate the enhancement of learning and development of all of Richmond's children, while at the same time offsetting and reducing child poverty. The city has already committed to cutting child poverty by 50% by 2030, and I'd like to see the gap between the city and academic performance, statewide performance. Cut that gap as close as far as possible between the same time period. Doing those two things together is what we are needed to make our public schools greater, and also unlock upward mobility for many of our children. At the end of the day, we want to develop the God-given capabilities of all of our children. And it is my hope that VCU School of Education will join us in building one Richmond. And that is ensure that no matter who you are, no matter what your skin, what neighborhood you may live in, that you can live out your God-given talents right here in the city of Richmond. VCU is my hope that you will be by our side as we continue to improve the lives of our children and create positive outcomes. Thank you so much.
That's pretty awesome. So we're fortunate to have with us two young women who represent the best and most important work that we do here in the School of Education, preparing educators for high needs environments, nurturing their skills and passion, and supporting them as they go out in our community. First, we'll hear from Danielle, or Annie, as she likes to be called, Green, who is a social studies teacher at Thomas Bouchard Middle School. However, before I introduce our first speaker, I wanted to take a few moments to recognize a very special guest, her mother, Daisy Daniels Green. Mrs. Daisy Daniels Green earned a Bachelor's of Science in Education from Virginia State University in 1980, and furthered her education by earning two Masters of Education degrees from Virginia Commonwealth University in K-12 Reading in 1989 and Administration and Supervision in 1998. She began her career as a classroom teacher with Richmond Public Schools in 1986. Her career expanded the course of 31 years, where she served in various roles, including classroom teacher, reading specialist, curriculum assistant principal, and principal. And of those 31 years, Mrs. Green dedicatedly and passionately served as the principal of Richmond's J.O. Francis Elementary School for 17 years, retiring this past 2016-17 school year. She devoted her time and effort to training students, teachers, and parents. She has enjoyed presenting for and training teachers and would like to continue her career in that field. Finally, she was a well-deserved recipient of the Community Foundation's 2016 REB Award for Distinguished Educational Leadership. Mrs. Green, we thank you for your years of service to Richmond Public Schools, to our community, and to our children. So if you could stand and say awesome daughter. And the apple does not fall far from the tree. Danny Green graduated from VCU in 2013 with a Master's of Teaching in Secondary Social Studies Education. For the past 5 years, first as Richmond teacher resident and then as a classroom teacher, Danny has served the children of Richmond Public Schools in many capacities, from history department chair and assistant step team coach at her middle school to the head varsity volleyball coach of a nearby Richmond High School. Also, since beginning her career in the classroom, Danny has begun writing curricula in her spare time, reviving and constructing the African American history curriculum for her district's high schools. Recently published a national curriculum on the constitutional crisis of Indian removal with Yale University, and is currently under contract with another university to assist with high school curriculum creation in cultural geography. Unfortunately, the 2016-17 school year was Danny's final year as a classroom teacher. However, she's excited to continue her career in education as a new PhD student in curriculum and teacher education at Stanford University this fall. Today, she will speak to us about her journey and how the School of Education has impacted her professional life and the impact that she wants to make on society.
So first, I'm all about speaking things
but I don't have a PhD yet. Just wanted to point that out. I will be working on that, but I appreciate the fact that you guys see it in my future. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I am truly honored to have the privilege of speaking with you all on what is the momentous occasion of Virginia Commonwealth University's School of Education's Fall Convocation. So now, I could start off with a quote or something else super inspirational to get your excitement flowing for the new school year. But instead, I'm going to start off with something very real. Right now, our city, our state, our nation is a political hotbed, a stressful state of affairs regardless of where you sit on those issues. Though I sorely, believe you me, sorely want to tell you what I think, it's not my place, especially not here. A school of education that emphasizes the importance of teaching people how to think, not what to think. However, I would be remiss if I didn't use where we are now to invite conversation about where we're headed, given that we are on the cusp of a brand new school year. I'm so happy to be speaking to a room that will cultivate and groom our future into the best and the brightest. Whether your path is headed towards policy, administration, counseling, research, or teaching, be conscious of the fact that you have the ability to mold, to build, or to break down human beings. Whether you intend to work with children, adult learners, or persons with disabilities, which I will point out is not mutually exclusive from the first two. You have come to a university, or you are at a university that is emboldening you and will place you in a position to make this world a better place for someone else. So what does all of this have to do with the current state of affairs politically? We'll do an exercise for me, right now. Didn't know it would be interactive, huh? Take a moment and think to yourself, and remember the educators who had the greatest positive impact on your life. Who were they? Why them? I may be mistaken, but I have an inclination that the educators who you thought of did not come to mind because they presented clear and concise content or gave you the proverbial blueprint to life's journey. I'm sure they were the educators who saw you, all of you, and were unapologetic in doing so, even if you didn't want to hear it, and it didn't matter whether it was politically correct or not. You see, we're not meant to look at our students as numbers, as a means to an end, as receptacles that are meant for filling. Regardless of the age level or the ability of your students, we are meant to perceive them as we would want to be perceived, as people with feelings, families, faiths, and beliefs. If at any point you feel as though you are incapable of working for the betterment of all people, embracing their races, ability levels, native languages, economic statuses, religions, or sexualities, education is not the place for you. I know this is contrary to what you kind of expect to hear before a new term begins, but it must be said, and it must be said early. The field of education is not for those who are working for themselves, but for others. And we don't get to pick which others we serve. Given all of that, before the new year begins, reflect on why you're here. But now that you are here, also reflect on how you can use your skills and interests to teach, in the words of Kid President, awesome things to the world. The greater Richmond area is such an amazing place to find out what your talents are and to put those talents to good use. I know, because save 4 years of undergrad, I've lived here my entire life. It felt only right that I return to Richmond upon graduation and continue my education right here at VCU as a part of the second cohort of the Richmond Teacher Residency Program. Professors like Dr. Alder, Dr. Muth, and Dr. Rich taught me many lessons, not only about my future classroom, but also about myself. I encourage you to sit through these classes, whether you're learning in them or teaching them, and continue to dream up the educator you want to be, and then remind yourself that the image is impossible to achieve, and for good reason. You see, the teacher I wanted to be is nothing like the educator I am now, and nothing like the educator or the teacher that I ended up being. As you grow in your research, in your practice, the educator of your dreams will change, and it should. My professors at VCU taught me that who you want to be and how you want to affect the world should change. Because we are in a profession that often digs its heels into how things have always been, instead of focusing on the magnificent things we could grow into being. When you reflect on that, think about the children, the people you are influencing. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I can offer is that you allow the individuals that you work with to grow into the newer and better versions of themselves too. Coming full circle, I was once asked why the children I taught loved me so much and so deep. And I'll tell you this, it wasn't because I crawled in between desks during lessons or offered surprise marriage proposals to unsuspecting children in order to teach them about the amendment process, or practiced my very best Harry Potter voice when reading long passages because I knew they would be absolutely and completely bored to tears otherwise. I did all of that, mind you. But it was because in my classroom, every day was a new day. Every day I told my 8th graders I loved them. And if they managed to say, "I love you, Miss Green," first, the response was always, "I love you more." I saw them, all of them, all parts of them. So when my black and brown children came in weary after Ferguson, after Baltimore, after the election, I didn't teach what the SOLs told me to teach. I taught them what they needed. I don't hold grudges from the day before. I held them accountable for their actions, and almost most importantly, I apologized to them when I was wrong. They may never remember how I taught them how a bill becomes a law, but they will remember that I saw them. Lessons from VCU School of Education are scattered throughout all of them. So go into this new fall semester, remembering that you've not only chosen a world-class place to receive or teach education, but you've been given an extraordinary opportunity to use your own gifts and talents to make the world a better place for all of us. Use the resources here to cultivate yourself into the premier researcher, teacher, educator, administrator, or counselor that you set out to be. Remember what it felt like to be cared for by members of this profession in your past, and let it propel you into this school year. Understand that you cannot shut the outside world out of your classroom, offices, or research. Your students need you to address the chaos and give them direction on how to navigate that. As Rams, I have very little doubt in your ability to do that. And as educators, I have no doubt that you can. Welcome to the new year at VCU School of Education. We're so happy that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. And now I welcome to the front Terry Morton Johnson. Terry is a doctoral student in the Department of Teaching and Learning's Curriculum, Culture, and Change track. Her research focuses on mathematics identity, engagement with math, and persistence into STEM-related occupations. Terry obtained her undergraduate degree in psychology from VCU in 1999 and a master's of education in administration and supervision from the University of Virginia in 2006. Prior to beginning the PhD program in 2014, she taught middle school math and science for 12 years in Virginia and North Carolina. Today, Terry will speak about her journey, how the School of Education has impacted that journey, and what she plans to do after graduation. Welcome.
I want to say good morning to everyone and welcome to a new school year. When I was invited to be one of today's speakers, they shared KID President's video with me and asked that I discuss what is my awesome. I thought to myself, isn't that a great question? What is my awesome? I needed some time to ponder that question. I'm also here to share how I would use what I learned at the School of Education to make an impact in the real world. Before getting into those two topics, I need to give some context by sharing a little bit of my story. In May of 1987, I attended my mom's graduation when she received her master's degree from VCU School of Education. During the university-wide ceremony, a group of graduates in fancy robes came on stage to receive their diplomas and put on what looked to me like colored capes. Their round caps were different from the square hats the majority of the graduates were wearing. I was intrigued and knew there must have been something that made those graduates stand out from the rest. That evening, I asked my mom about the group of special graduates, and she told me they had gone to school for many years, even more years than she had, and had been awarded doctoral degrees. She explained that they could now be called doctor because, like medical doctors, they had received specialized training and had knowledge in certain subject areas that most people do not have. I was only 9 years old at the time, so I did not fully understand what all of that meant. But it did not stop me from declaring that day, I'm going to do that when I grow up. I earned my master's degree in 2006 and toyed with immediately enrolling in a doctoral program, but life started taking twists and turns, and that pushed that dream further and further out of reach. When the fall of 2013 rolled around, I was 12 years into my career, just getting fully back on my feet after a divorce, and I had a child in kindergarten. After several years of personal turmoil, I was finally in a good place in my life, but I still didn't feel good on the inside. I had reached a point where professionally I felt like I was dying on the vine. I had taught math and science in grades 6, 7, and 8 multiple times in a few different schools, and those changes had always kept me fresh and creative. But now I was burned out. Developing new and innovative lesson plans, a process that I usually enjoyed, became tedious because my bag of tricks was empty. I knew I was not reaching my students and their families in the way I desired, but I did not know what to do differently. I needed to make a change, but after undergoing several major changes in recent years, I knew that change is difficult, time-consuming, and risky. It seemed foolish for a single mom in her mid-30s who finally had some stability in her life to make any more changes or take new risks. My master's degree is in administration and supervision, which had the potential to open doors to leadership positions. However, I knew from a one-year stint as a building level school administrator that I was not interested in being an assistant principal or principal. In 2012 and 2013, contract with an educational consulting company provided me with opportunities to facilitate professional development workshops for teachers in other school districts. From those experiences, I knew I enjoyed working with teachers and helping them get excited about teaching again, but I did not have enough experience or knowledge of educational research to engage in that type of work full time. I realized that whatever career mode I was going to make meant furthering my education. So in December of 2013, I got on the VCU School of Education website and began researching their PhD programs. A few months later, I gave up my job and my apartment, moved my son and myself in with my parents, and in August 2014, I entered the Curriculum, Culture, and Change PhD program as a full-time student. I applied to the program too late to secure any scholarships, So for the first year, I supported my son and myself through contract work as a consultant and a 10-hour per week graduate assistant position that I was fortunate to learn about early in my first semester. Despite undergoing yet another major life change, I felt more alive during that time than I had in a long time. When I entered the program, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in the next chapter of my career, but there were several things that were important to me. I knew I wanted to help make a difference in the educational experiences and outcomes of minority students, particularly in the areas of math and science. I also wanted to support the hard work that goes on every day in our schools and help ease some of the burdens that are placed on our teachers. Last but not least, I wanted to help bridge the sometimes adversarial gap that I had witnessed and experienced between home and schools. My CCC coursework and a couple of amazing elective classes opened my eyes to many macro-level influences impacting minority families, communities, and schools. What I learned confirmed what I already knew from my experience in the classroom. Frequent curriculum revisions, ratcheting up the credentialing requirements for teachers, and mandating higher test scores with penalties are not enough to overcome our obstacles. As I absorbed so much new information over the course of 2.5 years, I vacillated between wanting to pursue a tenure-track faculty position, full-time educational consulting, or returning to a local school district. There are several people in this room who have listened to me bellyache over my indecisiveness, and it's funny because they're all like sitting together over here. As frustrating as it could be at times, the beauty of not knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up with a PhD was that I was willing to try on different roles to see which would be the best fit for me. Toward the end of my first year, I applied for a graduate research assistant scholarship, and Doctors Wafon Wan and Diane Simon worked some magic to find funding to support the remainder of my studies. Through my work as a research assistant, I was given opportunities to assist with research projects, guest lecture in Masters of Teaching classes, co-author publications, and present at national level research conferences. All of these experiences, combined with my years of K-12 experience, helped shape my vision for the future. Today, as we gather at the outset of the fall 2017 semester, 4 years after what I call my professional existential crisis, I am the mother of a 9-year-old child. I am 1 year away from walking across the stage with my round cap and my color cape, and I have a clear plan for the work I want to do moving forward. I will apply what I've learned over the past several years to help the community where I grew up and still live. My 5 to 10-year plan is to open a community education center in the culturally diverse Falling Creek, Meadowbrook area of Chesterfield County. The center will offer low-cost after-school and summer learning programs for students in grades 5 through 9, adult education and employment services, support navigating the pathway to U.S. citizenship, and monthly workshops on a variety of topics for community members and families. The Community Education Center is a long-term goal, but I do not plan to wait that long before making the impact I desire. I came to the realization at the beginning of 2017 that while I enjoy many aspects of academia, my heart is in schools with students and teachers. I had 1 year of funding remaining as a research assistant, but in January I decided to notify the Office of Graduate Studies that I was returning to the workforce full-time while I completed my dissertation. I did not have any job prospects at that time, but I knew early notification would give them time to award the funding to another student. I applied for 6 jobs over the next few months, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. It was July 12th before I received the first request for an interview. My leap of faith finally paid off on July 20th, and I'm excited to report that on Monday morning, I will begin working in a position that will allow me to make a difference for minority students, support teachers, and help facilitate homeschool collaboration. As an added bonus, it will also allow me to lay the foundation for my future community education center. I am the new instructional coach for math and science at Falling Creek Middle School, the school that I attended in grades 6 through 8. 2 STEM nights for families. I will end my remarks with the question that started them. What is my awesome? After reflecting on my journey, I believe my awesome is my willingness to let go of what is safe and familiar in order to stretch myself and achieve new goals. And my awesome directly relates to Kid President's question, what are you teaching the world? In addition to helping build math and science literacy in my community, I think that sharing my story with others can help teach a life lesson. You don't have to settle for safe. It's never too late to start over if you're feeling stuck, or to make course corrections in order to fulfill your purpose. And while the path to one's purpose isn't always straight, I hope that my journey serves as an example that, in the end, every detour will have been worth it, because the final result is truly awesome.
Terry, that was great. Terry and Tanny are truly powerful examples of why we do what we do and the impact that it can have on students, children, families, and communities. Thanks again. Our next speaker sees this value each day, as well as the need in the field of education in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're working together on several initiatives, and I'm so pleased to have her here today. Dr. Deidre Trent was recently appointed Secretary of Education for the Commonwealth of Virginia by Governor Terry McCullough. Previously, she served as Deputy Secretary of Education, a position she also held during the administration of then Governor Tim Kaine. Prior to joining the McCullough administration, Dr. Trent served as Deputy State Director for Senator Mark Warner, and also served in the administrations of then Governors Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, as well as the office of Congressman Bobby Scott, and also in the President's office here at VCU. During her time in Governor Warner's office, Dr. Trent's proudest moment was establishing and obtaining state funding for the Minority Political Leadership Institute, housed here at VCU. The MPLI is a 6-week intensive program designed to promote leadership for aspiring individuals interested in service through elected office or assuming leadership roles within their communities. Dr. Trent, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. That was my one job to turn on the mic.
I might have to take those comments back. All those nice things that I was just saying about you. But I wanted to just say that I think Dean Dare has found out that it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing for the governor's office to find out about an individual who is as passionate and committed as he is. And as he said, his reward has been to serve on a number of our committees. And he's done a marvelous job. And since he's been here, he has not let us down, and nor has he disappointed. So VCU as well as Virginia is very lucky to have him. So would you please join me in thanking him? And I must always acknowledge the presence of Terry Dozier. She is an individual who sets an example for each of us in education each and every day. So thank you, Terry, for all that you do. I want to thank also Terry and Danielle for sharing your most inspirational stories. You guys are really hard act to follow, but I'm going to do my best anyway. I also want to thank you, the students, staff, and administrators within VCU School of Education. Nothing gives me greater joy than joining you for this joyous occasion. It is not often that I have the privilege to be with students as they begin their journey into the classroom. So on behalf of Governor McAuliffe and the Commonwealth of Virginia and our K-12 students, thank you for choosing this most honorable path as your career. I realize that the tragedy that took place this weekend in Charlottesville remained on the minds of everyone. That tragedy served as a painful reminder of the impact of violence in our community. Like most of you, what I saw and felt on Saturday took me to a place that I've never known before. And that place was very dark and ugly and very frightening. After the shock, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of impact would those images have on our children. What must they be thinking, and how would their parents explain the vitriol and the anger and the hate that they witness? I thought about you, our college students, particularly our freshmen, and wondered how nervous you and your parents must feel as you're leaving off to go to college. The Commonwealth will be dealing with this aftermath of Saturday for a long, long time. But through this tragedy, I have renewed faith in the transformational power of education. There is no job that literally touches the lives of every American and shapes the way we view the world more than that of an educator. And now, more than ever, we really need you. To the faculty, thank you for making VCU School of Education one of the best in the country. Your academic program embeds the needs of children throughout its curriculum, taking into account the conditions and environment which many of our high poverty students endure. Your work with Richmond Public Schools is vital to the changing conditions within our community. Your model, particularly teacher residency training, provides the hands-on experience necessary to be effective in urban schools on day one. But beyond that, you teach your students to take ownership of the success of each and every student that enters their classroom. And the results of this program is beyond extraordinary. Your graduates are the brightest. At this point, it would be appropriate for me to drop the mic, but I never find my place back in my speech, so I'm just going to say, hands down, period. You have the best program in the country, and we are very, very fortunate to have you in the city of Richmond. To the students, I regret to tell you, but you've got your work cut out for you. Someday you'll soon have to break the news to 24 bleary-eyed little children that summer really is over. And if you thought the first day of school was tough before, wait till you're standing on the other side of the desk. But in all seriousness, I have nothing but the highest respect and admiration for teachers and educators all over the world. While preparing for this occasion, I thought about how blessed I was to have teachers who cared so much for me. One in particular stood out. She was my first grade teacher and is almost single-handedly responsible for me being here today. She helped me to grow more confident and become aware of my individuality. And somehow at that tender age, she made the world seem a lot less scary to me. She literally poured her heart and soul into all of her children. She saw the genius in every child and dared them to see it in themselves. But as a child, it wasn't what I learned in her classroom that had the greatest impact on me. It was the example that she set outside of the classroom that shaped me and became the barometer by which I still measure the value of my life. After school and on weekends, she spent her time starting extracurricular activities for poor children in our community. Activities like a Girl Scout troop, a marching band, and softball teams. She volunteered with Save the Children Federation, an organization that paired poor children with affluent sponsors from across the globe. She was eager to expose her students to experiences and opportunities they otherwise would never have. She was a huge advocate for all children, deeming it her responsibility to ensure that they would not be defined by their zip code or their circumstances. Even when things got tough, when her students struggled, when she saw the results of entrenched intergenerational poverty. She kept the faith in the transformational power of education. And like each of you here today, teaching wasn't just a career, it was her calling. She never considered herself employed, rather, like you, she was deployed. Daily, she was deployed to plant seeds of hope and inspiration in the minds of young people, to encourage them to see beyond their boundaries into a place where they had only dreamed. Daily, she bought our confidence, she built our confidence and gave us the freedom to stretch beyond our own abilities and reach beyond our own expectations. When we were with her, we lived in the possible, and she gave us the courage to birth our dreams. My first grade teacher's name was Miss Faustina Mae Trent, and she was my grandmother. She taught for over 40 years in Halifax County Public Schools and literally impacted the lives of generations. I often told her that if I could give just half of what she gave of herself, my life would have been purposeful and not one lived in vain. My grandmother never taught beyond elementary school. Her name never ended up in the paper. She never received commendations from the mayor or governor or president, nor was she ever voted Teacher of the Year. But when she died at the age of 97, the church was overflowing with former students who came from across the country to share their story about how she had impacted their lives. As I look back, I've come to realize that I have yet to live up to her standard, not even if I have what she accomplished. As Secretary of Education, I've come to realize that success is not measured by one's title or position, but is measured by one's posture. And at the end of the day, it is only the posture to serve others that truly matters. But more importantly, I've come to realize that my grandmother was only an exception in my eyes. In reality, when you enter the classroom, you too, like Terry and Danielle has just proven, will embody everything that she did. You will be equally as passionate, and you will inspire your students each and every day. And you will do all that you can to ensure their success, to let them know that there are no limitations that they cannot overcome. The great author John Steinbeck once wrote, "I have come to believe that a great teacher is a great artist, and that there are as few as there are any other great artists." He went on to say, teaching might be even the greatest of the arts, since the medium is the human mind and spirit. Now, I appreciate the great graph of Mice and Men, East of Eden, and all of Mrs. Steinbeck's great literary accomplishments. But I have to admit I take issue with him when he said that there are as few great teachers as there are any other great artists. If I could, I would invite him to this auditorium today. It is full of nothing but great educators and students who are on their way to becoming great teachers. I'd invite him to go into the classrooms of other VCU graduates to witness the countless artists in our classrooms who are shaping the minds and spirits of our youth. I'd invite him to see the tens of thousands of teachers who sacrifice daily so their students can have a better chance at success. He would soon come to know that nearly every teacher in every community is an artist, and every year you create masterpieces that go on to make the world a better place to live. Our society has entrusted with you its greatest treasure, our children. You, in a large part, will determine the adults that they become. And you, in a large part, can change the course of history. So as I close, I just want to thank you for answering your calling. Thank you for your willingness to be deployed each and every day. And again, thank you for the privilege of being here. I hope you have a remarkable school year. May God continue to bless you.